Hi, I'm Jessica Rector, your host and founder of This Man Thing, where we help men think bigger, be bigger, and play bigger. And we want to help them gain more confidence, freedom, and success. You can find out more about us at thismanthing.com. And you're also free to join our free Facebook group. You can find that at thismanthing.com/groups, where men are having real conversation and building much needed community support and camaraderie with other men. Yakim Yediye is a transformational coach, husband, and son. In the first place, he likes to see himself just as another human being. Welcome to the show, Yakim. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about you and your background, and really what we're going to discuss today with you.
Well, so you know already my professional kind of background, so let's start with something more personal. And I guess it's at the heart at what we're going to talk about, and that is, when I was a child, around 6 or 7, I lost my dad. He committed suicide. And that has kind of been an event that has shaped me in many ways, and that has sent me on a whole journey for many years. And I've gone from being kind of not wanting that event to have any impact on me and be like, well, you're not my father, just you're gone, to coming back to actually love him and appreciate all of what has happened. So it's been a big change.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So how do you go from okay, you're not my father, to embracing him, not in spite of, but really because of what happened? That's a huge transformation to occur, especially when something like that happens when you're so young.
Yeah, so, well, it didn't happen for a long time. I mean, maybe 18, 19 years later down the road, that's where it happened. And really, I mean, I wasn't willing to look at it in any way, but because I was exposed to all this personal transformation things, and I was wanting to work with people, that just came up. It came up, and I looked at it with different people, with some coaches and some hypnotherapists. But there was this kind of big breakthrough when I realized how much pain there was still of that event, and I was willing to go through that and just release it, basically. Which, when I was crying like a baby in that moment, and it was a big release. But that was really the transformational moment was then.
So let's go back to your 6 or 7. Do you find out then that happened? Were you living with your dad?
Yes.
You were living with your dad.
Yes.
And so how did you find out? Were you told that that's actually what happened at that time that it happened? Or were you told something else, and then once you got older enough to understand, you were told the truth then?
Well, I mean, I remember because I was coming home from school, and the door was locked. So there was something wrong. There was some lunch on the table. I came home with my sister, and then when I came back home in the evening after playing with the neighbors, that's where my father was, and he was lying in a coffin, And my mom did talk to me about that, but I was in shock. So I wasn't able to cry. I was just like, I remember I was sitting on the bench with my mom and my sister, and my mom said, well, do you know he's not going to come back ever again? And that just didn't, I knew it in a way, but, that kind of implications weren't clear. Now with the suicide specifically, I mean, I did figure it out when I was young. It wasn't like later that I knew it. I don't know exactly when it was, but it wasn't at the forefront of the whole thing. The most important thing there was, well, my father's gone. That was the biggest thing. One day he's here and the next one is not.
So how do you deal with that as a 6 or 7-year-old? I mean, that's a lot to take on.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You don't know how. And that's why I think I cut myself off emotionally in that instant, because I didn't feel, that's just my own perception. I didn't feel there was a clear way of how to deal with it. There was no clear guidance from the older ones as well. So I was just kind of left by myself in a way.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that also is that in society, how we also teach boys, right? How society teaches boys and how a lot of parents teach boys. And I'm not speaking that your mom taught you this way. I'm just saying in general, a lot of parents in society teaches boys not to cry, not to feel, to be strong, to man up, that term that I absolutely loathe, to not show emotions. And so even at a young age like that, boys are still taught those things. So if you're taught something like that and then something big happens in your life to that extent, how do you kind of combine those and give yourself permission to feel, to process, to express those emotions so they're not bottled up inside of you, because that just creates a huge snowball effect. So how do you kind of come to the realization that it's okay to feel that? Or do you just bottle it up and act like everything's okay and everything's great and you're fine that, your dad passed away and he's not coming back, and, be this big, strong kid? Or do you give yourself permission to feel that, especially when society says, no, boys don't do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, obviously, I went the way of bottling it up,
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I was also, obviously, as a kid, you look for role models, and my brother was kind of a role model as well, and he was a lot older and stuff, and at least it looked to me like, he was not fully kind of expressing it and this kind of thing, so I tried to not express it myself. But, there's no really blame going around for me with this. It's just how I perceived it in the moment and the choice I made in this moment, which was a lifesaver and allowed me to keep going in my life. But eventually kind of was like, well, there's something wrong. There's a little bit something missing. Because,
so how did you find out? How did you come to that realization that, okay, there's something wrong, like something's not right? How did you come to the realization that you never had really processed that? There's going to be people listening that they're going to be in the situation, whether it's dealing with someone who's passed away, or whether it's dealing with something that happened to them when they were a kid, or, something that happened 5 years ago, things that they haven't processed, that they haven't fully given themselves permission to work through. So what was kind of that light bulb moment for you that you were like, okay, maybe there's something still left from that, 10 years, 20 years ago that I haven't fully dealt with?
Well, it was a gradual process. It wasn't kind of like a big aha in any way. Okay. It was more like I felt sometimes sad without any reason. I was like, and I felt empty in a way, and there was like, I wasn't fully expressing myself, and I felt like I was holding back, and so I went through different stages in my life. I went to do martial arts in a retreat center, and that helped me kind of come out of my more depressive side that I was in when I was in high school. So that was kind of like surviving there, and then I realized I can use my body. And then later on, when I went to hypnosis, and for a long time, even then still, I was like, no, my father, whatever, that just happened, and I'm over it, doesn't matter. And it was really with a practitioner. I was working with this woman, and she does cleanses, and during that time, I realized, oh my God, right, there is something that I need to look at that I don't want to look at. I was fighting it with tooth and nail to not look at that.
So why were you fighting it?
Because I was afraid of it, and it hurt.
So is it fair to say you're afraid of feeling the pain associated with that?
Feeling the pain associated with it, yes, absolutely. And also, for a long time, I felt people were reducing me to that event. And I always felt people wanted to push me back into that pain. Even though they might have just been pointing out that maybe there's something to do. But for me, it was like, hold on, you really can't do that. Like, no, that's not that. There's nothing there. That just happened. It's just one thing. I'm not that event. I am more than that. And so that kind of accumulated over time to have even a bigger resistance to not wanting to go there.
That's very, very interesting. Wow, I would have never thought that. That's very interesting how it's like the one thing that you need to work through when people, the more people like said, hey, you need to look at that. You were even more resistant because you're like, no, I'm bigger than that. That's just one thing that happened in my life. I am so much more than that one event. So, wow, that's like that was a light bulb moment for me just to hear you say that, because I think a lot of people think that same thing. Like, no, I moved past it. That happened 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And I was working with a client who said the same thing, that they thought they'd worked through something that happened 20 years ago. Her abuse, she said, that happened 20 years ago. I've totally worked through that. I'm past that. And she didn't realize how it was manifesting in her lives and the lives of the decision that she made with being in relationships. This is when I was working with females exclusively, but when working in relationships, and how she wanted to date men who just gave her any attention because any attention was better than no attention, like things like that. And, I think it manifests in men's life in the same ways. It may look differently, but in the same ways when they haven't dealt with things, right? It manifests in their career and in relationships and who they choose to love and decisions that they make. Did you ever go back and look at, now that you did the transformational work, did you ever go back and look at certain situations or things that happened where, because you didn't deal with that, meaning like you didn't process your emotions around that, where it could have shown up or where it did show up in your life?
100%, yeah, for sure. In retrospect, especially, it was like the lessons I felt I learned there was like, if someone loves you, you're either going to get hurt, they're going to leave you, or something else bad. So basically, love is bad, it's hurtful, it's painful. And so in one way, I want love, but at the same time, I'm pushing it away.
Yeah.
That's kind of the place I was in. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, right. That's kind of the thing I've been going. I was craving love. I was like wanting to be with people, but at the same time, I was distancing myself. And so it's like, love me, but not, it's like, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
That is huge. You gave me goosebumps, because the same thing happened for me, is that I thought, well, love equals pain. So I was thinking the exact same thing, is like, oh no, I want to be loved. I deserve to be loved. But yet love equals pain. So it's like, with one hand, I'm saying, come, come, come. And with the other hand, I'm saying, no, wait. Because, I was really close with my uncle, and he passed away. And then my brother died by suicide, and I was extremely close with him. And so it's like the same thing. I had this in my head, that love equals pain, not knowing that that's really was at the core, right? I was just like, no, why am I not finding love? Why is love not coming to me? This kind of stuff, not knowing that that's really how my subconscious was behaving and acting. And then I would make decisions based on that, right? Push people away because it's safer, right? Because we control the situation. And when we control the situation, we don't have to feel the pain because we're in control, right? So we think, okay, well, if we're in control, we're not going to feel pain. So that's really, that's like a huge light bulb moment though. So what did you do once you realized that?
Well, the thing is, I realized it after I resolved it.
So tell me what that looks like. What does that look like?
Resolving it? Yeah.
And then how you realized that after you resolved it.
So when I resolved it, I for the first time I actually recognized that I was pretty much sitting on a flame the whole time, burning my ass. But just that was familiar. I knew how to deal with that. Right? Still hurting like all the time, and it's happening all the time. But I'm used to that. So I know that what's going to happen when you step off of that. Wow. But when I first actually saw, not just intellectually saw, but I actually saw, that it was that moment where something switched in me, and I was like, oh, of course I'm going to release that. And it wasn't a conscious thing to say; it just happened, right? And then afterwards, when I saw it, I was like, especially with my wife, I was like, oh, yeah, I've been somewhat pushing her away at the same time wanting her, you know.
Mm.
And so that really changed the dynamic of our relationship. You know, just being absolutely there and just like, look, that's me. I'm raw. I'm open, completely open. And you can do whatever you want. I wasn't afraid anymore.
God, that is so powerful, so powerful. Let me go back just a minute to what you said about, you know, you're sitting on a fire, burning yourself, but you know how to deal with that. So you keep doing it.
Yeah.
As opposed to doing something different because you don't know how to deal with it, because you don't know what's going to come up. There are so many people out there doing that exact same thing because guess what? They've been doing it for 10 or 20 or 30 years, so they know how to deal with it. They know what's going to come up. They know how they're going to react. They know how they're going to feel. They know how they'll numb themselves. They know every step, and they know exactly what that looks like, right? And so that is a safer bet every single time than doing something different, trying something different, because they don't know what's going to come up. They don't know how it's going to make them feel when it comes up. They don't know how they're going to respond, and that in itself is scary. So how do you go from basically doing what you've always done, right? Hurting to a certain extent, but that hurt is familiar. You know that hurt. So you're okay with that amount of hurt because it's familiar to you. How do you go from that to stepping into what could possibly be more hurtful or more freedom, right? But you don't know. So how do you take the leap from this to saying, okay, I don't know what this is going to look like. I could definitely hurt more, but I'm familiar with that, but I'm going to take that step. How do you decide to do that? And then what makes you do that?
For me, it was, as I said, that when I saw it, because sitting on the fire, it's not just a small, it's going to keep eating you up. Mm-hmm. And it's going to destroy stuff, you know. And for people, it might be that they go into drugs and alcohol and other things, and it's just going to keep showing up. It's not like, yeah, I'm just sitting on the fire and yeah, maybe it's a bit uncomfortable. No, it's destructive. It's really destructive. And that's when I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, yeah, that's actually destructive. And it's something, you know, I saw before I went to that woman. I was on a retreat and I was co-leading, and there was a guy who had quite a bit of anger and was towards the end of the time, and we kind of opened the circle and all the anger came out, and I looked him in the eyes and I went with him into it. I'm kind of trying to not make the story too long, but basically I was there, I was with him, we went into the pain that he had. He thought he was angry, but it was pain and sadness. I felt that, and he said, you know, I've had kids. He was in his 50s, and they cut themselves because I couldn't deal with it. They taken stuff on, you know. And so I saw how destructive it was in someone else. And so for me, I was like, when I saw that I was actually doing the same thing, I was reliving this stuff at some level, that could have been a potential future of me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, no way. I won't deal with it now.
Wow. Then that's so true, how people choose to mask it, right? And a lot of times in men, it's masked in anger, right? And it's not anger. It's because of that pain, but they're choosing anger as the outward thing as opposed to dealing with the pain on the inside, because they don't know any other way to deal with it. And instead of maybe going to addiction, they get mad, they have a temper, they lash out, and that's their safe place, right? That's their fire is going there as opposed to dealing with pain. And it's just another way to mask it. And, you know, I applaud you for looking at this man and saying, wow, that could be my future. I mean, that's big to see yourself in someone else like that. And then what did you choose once you saw yourself in him? What did you choose to do? What was the first step that you took to make a change? I mean, because obviously, like, you seeing yourself was like, okay, light bulb, oh my gosh. But then it's like, okay, great, I see it. So now what? What do you do now?
Well, I didn't see it right away. That's the thing. So we went through that. He had a big release and everything like that. And I went through the cleanse with that woman for like 7 days. And she always says everything is a reflection of you. Mm-hmm. And then at some point, I don't know when, but I was like, oh my God, she's right. That's me. I'm sitting on the fire myself, like him. He's just a lot older. He has a lot of more stuff that happened for him. I'm like, oh my God. And as well, when you don't just understand it on an intellectual level, you actually see it, you actually feel it. You know, when you go back, when this kind of thing opens and you're like, there's no question anymore of how you do things. It just doesn't come up anymore, because for you that it's like day and night. You know, when you go away from that protective bubble and you're like, oh my God, this is what's been happening. Well, for me at least, that was just enough, just seeing it.
So what do men have to do to get out of that protective bubble? Because if they've been living in it so long, what kind of situations do they need to put themselves in order to see that that's them? Or what do they need to, invest in order to go, okay, well, that's me. I'm just thinking there's going to be people listening and they're going to go, I don't know if that's really me. I think I've dealt with it. So if you're talking to you before who said, no, I've dealt with it. I'm good. Like, that's just an incident. Like, I'm so much bigger than that. Like, that's just something that happened. What would you say to that version of you in order to get them to see you now?
Well, I mean, one thing is, what do you feel when you say that? Because what I felt was like, pushing away. So, if it's not a thing, if it's not a big thing, well, where are all those emotions coming from? What's happening there? If it's no big deal, then what? Because when you're truthful to yourself, you're gonna feel it. You're like, wow, it's there. But again, for me, I wasn't ready for a very long time, so it happened when it happened. And for me as well, it's respecting the person. If they think, no, it's not me, that's fine. They'll find out when it's the right time for them.
But I love how you say, like, when someone mentions it, what's your reaction to it, right? What's the emotion coming up? Because if it's not a big deal and you've moved past it, well, then why are you pushing it so strongly away, or why are you so against it, as opposed to just embracing it and saying, it happened. However, like, this is where I am now, and not being so strongly opposed to talking about it or dealing with it or discussing it, or, just embracing what came out of it. And one of the things for me is, I don't know how you feel about it, but for me and my brother, it was, it was a complete and utter shock, even though I was a grown adult. I don't think that that's something, no matter how old you are, that you're ever prepared for. But when it happened, after I processed it and I started looking at it and saying, okay, what now can I do to help others? Which is how this man thing got started. Like, what can I do to help men who not necessarily are in that same situation, but before they even get to that situation, right? How can I support them? Of course, I was asking, like, why did this happen? Like, what's at the core of it? What's at the issue of it? But for me, it was also about, okay, now something good's going to come out of it. Because of that, I'm able to then help all these other men who need help in a different way. They don't have to have suicidal thoughts or anything, but because of that, I was able to do something good from it. And I believe things happen for a reason, even something as tragic as that. And I believe that something like that helps you become the person that you're meant to be. I would never wish that upon anybody, but I also believe that you became a stronger version of yourself because of that happening, and because you're able to process that, right? Because you were able to go through a transformation yourself. I mean, that's what you do in your work now, and you're able to help so many other people do that as well. And so I applaud you for recognizing these things in yourself, and not only in yourself, but using them to help so many other people out there as well. So tell me, what's one thing that if somebody is seeing themselves, or say, you know what, I've processed that, but they're open to the idea of going back there and processing it in a different way or in a better way. What is one thing that if somebody is sitting on the fire today, what's one thing that they can do to get off the fire, to go through the transformation like you were able to go through? What would you recommend to them? What's one step?
Well, one step. Well, look, I've been always lazy, in quotes, because I always sought help, coaching or whatever. And so that's what got me started. And that's what I can recommend is find someone who you have a good feeling that you think, they can help facilitate what you want to achieve. And I mean, I didn't start. Don't get me wrong. I didn't start. It wasn't like I saw, okay, I got to process this with my dad, so I'm going to go and find someone who's going to help me process. That wasn't it. I was like, I want to be more successful. I want to have a bigger impact with people. So let me find someone that can help me with that. And that was the journey. I did not think at any level this is going to lead to where it led, But help from someone, I feel, is really, really beneficial.
Yeah, because we can't do it on our own, right? Life isn't meant to be lived and done all on our own. But I also think that's one of the things I work on with my clients. In order for me to help you get where you want to be, we've got to find out how you've gotten to where you are. And so many people don't work on that. But it's like, if not, you're going to continue to repeat the patterns that you've always known, right? You're going to continue to sit on the fire. And I've got to say, that is like one of the best things I've ever heard. So I am going to use that. Like, are you sitting on the fire? I think that's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I love, love, love that. So tell us where we can find out more about you and where we can get in contact with you. Yachim.
All right. So, I don't have a website. The only way you can find me is go on Facebook, type in my name, add me as a friend, or message me. I work through referrals and people who I meet. That's the way I work with. Who knows, maybe in the future I'll have a website, but for now I don't.
And for those of you who's interested, I'm going to spell his name. It's Jachym, last name Jerie. So Jachym, Jerie. So if you want to look him up, feel free to look him up. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and your transformation. It was extremely powerful. And I know there's going to be a lot of guys that get great things out of it. Great nuggets, as I like to say, out of it. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening today. Again, I'm Jessica Rector, your host and founder of This Man Thing, where we help men think bigger, be bigger, and play bigger to gain more freedom, confidence, and success. Find us at thismanthing.com and feel free to join our Facebook group at thismanthing.com/groups, completely free, where we're having real conversations with men and they're building much needed community support and camaraderie with other men. Yes, it's a men's only group facilitated by yours truly, Jessica Rector. And we will hear from you next time. Again, reach out to me anytime you want. You can find me at jessica@thismanthing.com. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on today's episode. And also, if we can help and serve you in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we will look forward to having you next time. Until then, have an amazing day. Bye-bye.